Lawrence. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone being here for this service subgroup. As many of you know, we have an overall data development work group, and the data collection systems is one of those subgroups. And so we're excited to have everybody here today to begin this process. We had a early on discussion that just kind of alluded to some of the information today. So just to be short, I'm going to jump right in and kind of talk a little bit about our overall purpose for the data collection systems subgroup. So ultimately, what we really want to be able to do is to really understand more about all the data systems that you guys use. Now, we understand quite a bit just based on the first few years of our conversations with many of your agencies about the mass amount of systems that are used across the state. I'm not telling you anything that you guys do not know, but one of the things that we want to be able to do is really streamline how you collect that information, how you use it from each of your programs, and how you're able to benefit both of you from an agency and a data collecting standpoint, but also how are you able to use the systems that you have in place to better serve the families that we serve. So I'll, really just go ahead and throw it over to Lawrence and let him kind of lead us through what we're doing today and the overall purpose of that. And then I'm going to be on here just to listen in and hopefully take this first big step in this process. So without further ado, Lawrence, go right ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Okay. We started this project with a couple of outcomes in mind. We really want to be purposeful with this work group, and part of that purpose is to do some actual planning and work or in and around connecting data systems. If our end goal, if we had one primary goal for this work group, it is to increase the connectivity between data systems. Okay, that may mean inside the agency, it could be outside or interagency, it could be any number of things that we want to look into, but the connectivity of systems is what's paramount. And the purpose for that is so that we are more efficient in our networks and that we address challenges that we already are identifying and that are occurring. That's why we're pulling you all together to help fuel that conversation and identify those items. So outcomes for this group, a lot of what I'm going to explain today talks to this, but we want to identify first the commonly used data systems. All right, there's some work that's been done around that. We've got a model for how to push this forward rapidly without having to do a whole lot of creation on the front end. But realistically, we're collecting this information from our network. Right? So we want to identify the common ones. Not just the system, but the use of the system, right? It's one thing to have a system. It may do a lot of things, but we want to know what you use it for. Ultimately, we want to get to a point where we're agreeing on creating APIs to connect systems that don't already have public APIs. I'm going to talk about APIs here in a little bit. For now, it's just a little bit of magic that makes databases talk together. Okay, and then the last thing is that we want to be able to describe a cross-agency data sharing model. So once we get the technology in place, that's like half the battle, right? The other half is actually agreeing on this stuff. So MOUs and making sure that we've got some ironclad data sharing policies in place that we can agree on. Okay. Okay. So why do we want to share data? Why is data sharing important to the agencies? First thing is that it is when we look at our clients and we're being client-centric, this further enables us to have that client-centric mentality, right? So I hear it from most, if not all agencies, that we want to be able to provide services and treat the individual's condition where they want to go or how it is that we're helping to affect their lives. Increasing our visibility to all of our data systems just helps to hasten that process. right? Second, it improves program efficiency, right? Being able to share data, being able to, for instance, having, for those agencies that do a universal intake, understand the value of being able, or the efficiency involved in being able to share that data right up front, right? You've got single data sources that are spread across multiple data collection systems. So paying attention to that. And then we want that advanced program evaluation and advocacy. So at the end of the day, we can start connecting the dots and do actual analysis across data systems and see and get another layer of data analysis that we may not have had at our fingertips before. So for those agencies that do have that kind of connectivity between even some of their systems, you can see it and the enhancement that you have when you can look at all of your data at a time or be able to cross-reference things rapidly. Okay. That's great. That's wonderful. We would love that all to happen like tomorrow. Okay. However, we've got some barriers, right? So here are some of the things that we've identified initially as barriers to this process. And I'll open up here after I explain these to see if we can hash out maybe a few more, or you can drop them in chat would be even better as we go through these if things come to mind. All right. So first one is technical barriers. We know that the systems don't always speak the same language, and there are incompatibilities, right? You can be talking about the exact same data point, but it could be called something different in two different systems, right? We've seen that. Second thing is lack of existing APIs, whether they're paid or public, right? There are a lot of public APIs out there. I have not done all of the research yet to see which ones are there. I'd love to know. That may be part of this process as we move forward to discover the existing APIs. But we know that we lack the ones that are important in connecting some of our most powerful data systems and data collection systems. Okay. And then another technical barrier is going to be data security. So we can do all of this stuff potentially and do it poorly and expose a lot of data to bad actors. So we want to be very careful as we move forward that we're addressing all of the security policies that are important to keep the data safe. More importantly, it keeps our clients and our agencies safe. All right. Another barrier to this is a lack of standardization in process and workflow in this area. All right. So at all of our agencies, we operate differently. There is no real standardization across agencies in all areas. There may be some in some areas, right? So a lot of times we can use standard data practices, data capture practices. Roma helps a little bit with how we define that. But as we move forward, we want to be able to increase our ability to define those standards interagency, right? For whatever that means and wherever we can start with that, okay? Another is going to be workforce training. So as these things come online, it's like when a new product is announced and everybody's into the new product, but not everybody's into the new product, right? So when the organization goes through an update or change in how the data systems work, it's important that everybody understands what's going on so that when they interface with the data systems, they are not using like an old way of doing things that may interrupt the processes that you put in place. And then with workflow integration, that's a combination of our technical look at things, and then also how it is that we work through programs in a workflow kind of a way, right? So the workflow of one program may be different than others, or we may have done some alignment, like for billing or for a funder or something like that. The thing that we're looking for is how do we do better at integrating those workflows between programs so that the data capture makes sense. Okay. Last area of barriers that we'll address would be in policy governance. So looking at the privacy regulations that were required to abide by, and then those that we choose to for the sake of our clients. That the that that we address data ownership, or that we're at least aware of how data ownership works with each of the data collection systems that we're using, right? Too many times we've heard challenges in that area where agencies have had their data locked in a system and almost contractually, and have a difficult time moving it from one platform to another, for instance. All right. So we want to be very aware of what restrictions there are around data ownership. And then there are funding restrictions. Certain funders require certain data collection systems or other systems to be in place. So we have to be aware of that and address that. And that's a large reason why we're looking at things like APIs to connect systems that we're required to use. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've done some work. By we, I mean Community Action Marin has really done some work. And I believe they've worked a little bit with CSET, so thank you for that, and some other agencies that participated in an initial study of data systems and data tools that we're using across the network. CalCAPA and Community Action Marin have pulled together a kind of a next level of that, and that is this group's sort of primary focus is how it is that we're initially going to understand what data tools and systems are being used for right now in California, and prioritizing how we look at connecting those systems, right? So we'll talk about that here in a little bit, like what that means. But do know that a lot of the work that comes in this presentation, and then that spurred things moving forward, was initially started by Community Action Marin and Kelly Slatery. I don't think that she was able to make it on the call today, but she's really impactful for that, and I wanted to give her a little credit. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yes, yes. Okay, very good. So Rob, you're probably going to recognize some of this work in here. Okay, it should rhyme with what you know. All right. So here's some of the results. Here's some of what we've learned. Without getting too specific and tying these to the specific agencies. Here's just a sampling. This was out of what, 5 or 6, I think 6 different agencies contributed to this list here of data. This is more than data systems. This is also data tools. So data tools and systems that are being used by various agencies, right? And I don't even know that this is necessarily an exhaustive list from each of those agencies. It could be. But a lot of times we'll pick one up because it's new and we just started using, I don't know, ChatGPT for something, or we started using Gemini in Google with the AI tools, right? For whatever reason. So this is an initial list. This list will probably grow, but we also want to know where it's duplicated, right? We want to know from all of our agencies, particularly those using Head Start, what are the common tools that they're using and why? So like Child Plus, desktop versus online, and why? Why do you use one particular system for particular tasks, and why others for others? Okay, and we can sort that. That's part of the process. So not only are we looking at the data systems, we're also looking at how those systems are used. Now, the original research that was done is looking into kind of a mashup of programs and funders and so forth. So we're teasing that out just a little bit so that we can look at the purpose of the tool and then which programs it's applied to, right? So say you've got an intake, a piece of software that you're using for intake, you use that intake software in Head Start, and maybe you've got a couple others. Okay, but that's what we would want to know. We want to know like what systems are being used and when are you able to use them for multiple purposes. Okay, there's a lot of kind of how you do that in the near future for that, but in terms of data or collecting this information from agencies, we're trying to make that as easy as possible. So I'll speak to that here in a little bit. But this is the kind of information that we want to gather so that we can look across and see just how popular, might be the wrong word to use, but how frequently particular data tools and data systems are used across the California network, and are they working for you? Right? Because it's one thing to have the tool in place. It's another thing to be happy with the tool in place. So we've included some rating capabilities to that. So you can give us an idea if this is a tool that you would recommend or something that you're really happy with, or is this a tool that maybe you're like a 1-star kind of, yeah, we use it because we have to, or we're transitioning into something else, and this is why. Okay. And that happens. We hear it from time to time. Okay, I'll get into APIs here in just a second. But I want to pause here because we talked about barriers and we talked about tools without getting into what tools are you using, because we've got a form for that. What are some of the other things that are coming to mind, particularly as you are interested in understanding what tools are being used in California and how they're being used, and then this sort of project of pulling all of that together in almost a directory. Boy, David, we were thorough. Okay, that's fine. We're going to learn as we go too. Okay, so purpose of the group is to start here and move this forward. Then this next section here is really what it is we're going to do with all this information. So when we have enough data to start prioritizing, that's when we're going to start looking into the development of APIs. Okay. I say looking into because that is a big process. So for anybody that's on the call that's gone through that, I'm going to open this up here in a moment to hear about your interactions with that and your experience with creating APIs. But suffice to say, an API is essentially a piece of code that connects two databases, right? Or more, two or more, and in multiple areas and under multiple conditions, right? So there's triggering elements and there's if this then that type stuff that goes on with APIs. All right, but it's the bit of code that allows those specific pieces of software to talk together. All right, in general. Okay, a couple of the things that we know are challenges to using APIs, that there are a lack of existing public ones to use. Right? It can make it challenging to connect your systems if there's nothing out there to connect them already. It also makes it expensive. We'll get into that. There are potential legal ramifications of data sharing, even if you have the technology to do that. If you implement something, you need to know that you're within your terms and conditions to move that forward, right? We understand that some of the main data systems that we use, like Child Plus, have pretty significant restrictions there. Anyone who works with WIC will understand that they've got very, very strict restrictions about data sharing. So we want to be very cognizant of that as we move it forward. CalCAPA is in a place where we can have different kinds of conversations at the state level. Okay. It is technically challenging to write APIs. Okay, so in order to write APIs, you have to have a programmer that understands the code sort of on both sides. So if you can imagine connecting data system A and data system B, they need to be familiar with both of those data systems in order to code an API to connect them. And not only that, they need to know what you want that thing to do. What pieces do you need to connect? Okay, so the skills to do that are a lot more than just saying it out loud. Although maybe with the AI soon enough it'll happen. But in the meantime, we've got to use real humans with real brains that can do real coding and earn real money. So well, we're looking into how we might overcome that technical barrier. One of those options is hiring out a consultant. Okay. And besides building the thing, the last item there is the long-term maintenance of the API. So as data systems change, it only takes one change in one system for the thing to break, right? And then it's important to be able to address those breakages as they occur and have them fixed and move on with life, right? Yeah, let's pause here. So I'm going to go back a slide. While we're talking about APIs, who on the call here today has had any experience with custom APIs? Oh, we might all be learning together. That's okay. All right. And thank you, Lily. Thank you for the response there. Yeah, so I guess we'll all learn. All right. We took some initial steps looking into the cost of things. We understand it's not an inexpensive endeavor. Oh, okay, good. I don't know Postman, but I want to learn more. Um, well, we can come back to that. As we move it forward, we want to learn about all the tools that we're using so we can include um, any of the connectivity tools in that as well. We at CalCAPA use some no-code solutions for things. We've been using Zapier for quite a while, and then dabbling with Make, which used to be Integromat. So those are things that are like they are. I don't know. They're not as solid as using an API to connect two items. It's a go-between that plays that role. Um, and it doesn't always connect into systems that you want it to, right? So having a coded API makes that work for everybody. So as we understand it, the cost to code things is in the tens of thousands for one um, bit of connection. So one A to B kind of connection, and that would have multiple links in that connection. But establishing just one of those APIs can be upwards of 20K. So we're considering a lot of different options on how to approach that. We can use your help in shopping that, honestly, looking for resources that are available to help with the API coding. We're very interested in that. This is kind of a new area for us to get into, though we find that it is much needed and very valuable, particularly when we heard feedback at the NASCASP training on the annual report at the beginning of the year. So it's very clearly something that'll benefit a lot. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, we'll check out Postman. There's a link in the chat. Check out Postman. Thanks, my friend. Okay. So here's what we're anticipating doing with this work group, with this service group. First thing is that we want to get more agency participation in the data development work group. Participation may be joining the group, it may be responding to some of the requests for information that we send out to the network. Second thing would be agency completion of the data collection systems survey, which is just about ready to go out. We need to do some finishing touches on that before we can release it, but the idea is to accelerate what Community Action Marin has already started in order to get a more complete picture of what data systems and tools are being used in California. And then lastly, to engage in planning discussions to resolve these challenges that we know are there. So this is not a final meeting. This is really kicking things off so that we can have periodic discussions on how we're moving forward, prioritizing which systems should be connected with an API, how it is that we're going to do that, and then what kinds of agreements need to be in place to ensure that we're not overstepping regulatory bounds. Okay. All right. David, do you have any other thoughts as we move this project forward?
Yeah, I just want to re-hit on when you the slide about known challenges. One of the things we get anytime you start a new project are all the concerns, and that's kind of one of the purposes of this group is trying to get all of those out as much as we can, and our goal is that those challenges don't necessarily mean no, they just mean not yet. And Lawrence hit on that. Some of it may be as simple as policy challenges with a certain program. So we're going to try to figure out what's going to be our best opportunity to create a successful API. So the way we evaluate that, of course, right, is what is the most used, multiple systems. What is the most what is the program that is mostly ran by all agencies that's not CSBG, right? We all have CSBG. So what is another program? What's the biggest program that everybody has? And so that kind of sets my work forward, which is building those relationships with that funding source to start talking about regulations and data sharing opportunities and what do they feel needs to be accomplished to reach the what we're trying to do. So I just wanted to hit on that again a little bit, that again, it's let's note those. And I've been at the association for about 3 years now, so some of the program policies may have changed, and I may not know that, so it'd be nice to know that. And then ultimately just scheduling those meetings with those people, either whether it's at the state level or at the federal level, and just having an open discussion about, well, what do we need to do to achieve this. And Lawrence mentioned it. We all know WIC's probably one of the most stringent on their rules. We know anybody that does housing and has to use HMIS, they're not always have notoriously been, not really fond of data sharing. And again, we had this conversation yesterday. We understand why. It's the idea that a customer ought to know exactly what they're signing up for when they come to a program, and whatever service that they're coming to present with. They need to be protected in that sense. So we get all that. We understand that. We do know that, but we have to be real. That's what's hindered our data development versus us, you know, versus a private company. You go into a Walmart or Target and they've got every info on you they could possibly get, and they're able to use that data to do their services better and more efficient and effective. And we want to be able to do the same, but we understand the scrutiny and the concern that comes around when you're operating programs for poverty. So I just wanted to re-hit on that's not a stop. So while a lot of this will be technical discussions, and we hope that a lot of you are willing to give your time to be a part of that, uh, we understand this may be a decade-long process, but in the meantime, our goal is to say, at the end of the day, if we can find one and build it out, show that it works, then that really helps us sell the idea of writing these and building these for multiple programs, because people start to be able to see the results of that. And some of them may be simple, and so let's grab for the low hanging fruit first, that benefits the majority of agencies, and then we'll go keep building from there. So it's really trying to get down to very specifics and thoughts, and using the collective knowledge that's on this group, the collective knowledge across the state, to really do it efficient, do it effective, and try to keep our costs as low as we possibly can in that development. But I'd love to get feedback or thoughts, or and if people are looking at it saying this may not be worth the effort, we just want to keep everything separate, then we can always throw it away and do something different. But we just love to get you guys thoughts on just the whole process of kicking this off, and if it's really going to be a benefit of agencies to have APIs that help you, not only help you guys that are doing the reporting, but also help the frontline staff that are doing the services.
Hey, David and Lawrence, thanks for putting this together. I mean, obviously, Kelly and I at Community Action Ren, I mean, we see value in this. That's why we kind of brought this up in the first place. So, at least that try to put some common data systems together. And that actually came out of a Roma Coalition meeting. We first had some discussion, a Roma Coalition meeting that I was in, mentioned it to Kelly, and so we just decided to go ahead and put together that just simple, or she put together really that simple data collection tool. So I appreciate you piggybacking on that. But we definitely see value. I'm not a technical expert on this. I mean, I guess it's APIs and other, appropriate data connection, systems, right? In some cases, or maybe something that maybe it's not technically an API, but it's some way to connect systems together. If some routine that runs at some frequency, even in some cases, we've got to, manually trigger something once a month, but it's better than at least we can get the data. Like for example, I think it's from we run a Spark Point program. It's through United Way Bay Area. It's a Salesforce system that they have, so we're able to once a month run a routine to get that data into I guess it's technically into CAD, it's not into Empower, but into CAD. So at least that's something. It's better than it's not a real API, but at least it's more automated than having to at least there's some data connectivity there. Kelly and I, as we were talking, I mean, HMIS feels like a common one that many agencies are going to struggle with. That's probably not considered low-hanging fruit, though. I think it's maybe one that there's more in common, and I think people could maybe relate to that because many of us bump into that as a barrier. Like I said, probably not the one to start with. And I guess that would maybe be feels like in things like this, I agree with the low-hanging fruit example, that if there's maybe something that if there's a system where like more than one agency could benefit from it, but yet that would be pretty doable, just a sort of proof of concept. It seems like that's always a good idea. And then people can kind of see like, hey, look, here's something that we were able to do. I don't know the example. I'm not sure which one's the right one. I guess that's what the survey will help maybe tease out. But we're all in. We appreciate you guys doing this.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. And right now our goal is to get our own data collection here, which is let's figure out exactly what we have, because I think it helps us, talk to CSD, talk to the federal OCS, which is we didn't really mention that, but OCS is very, very interested in TNTA providers like ourselves working with individual agencies on their data development and their data collection. So we were already doing this because it's of interest and it's of need, but they also saw that need as well and put it out in some of their policies and put it out in some of their languages. So it's a good time to do it, because it's always nice to have leadership and have funding backing the ideas of it. And if we give them solutions for what they see the need as, it's good. I just want to throw that out there. But part of it is we know it's an early step to gain all that will help us when we get ready. But we will have to take a step back and say, what really is it? I have my opinions or visions of how I ran my agencies, but that doesn't mean a hill of beans to you guys, right? It's how you want to run your agencies and what you want out of it. We can simplify it as much as at the end of the day, being able to maximize reporting to funders. That's simple. The second thing is giving you realistic data for grant writing, for planning and for, trying to get additional funding, having a very, very solid piece. One thing that I've always emphasized in my previous agency work was, but I want the system to work for the frontline staff too, right? And we were to a point where we were double entering because we wanted a statewide system. And that created some policy conflicts because you had some funders that said, no, you can't require that they give you that information before they receive this service. And you're using this you have another service collecting the required collection tools to receive the service. And so we had to work on that. But I was doing that at an agency, and it's like, well, if I'm doing this, why aren't we doing this collectively? So we kind of brought that thought here. That's what this information really will help us do, so that I can use my time wisely, saying, who do I need to go meet with? Because you'll see the benefit for the majority of people. So that's kind of those three things. We can take a step back. I just assume, most folks want that data so that they can just better plan and better show results and better talk about even if it's increasing knowledge of the communities we serve, the realistic understanding. So, and it's hard to do that with so many things that are service counts and such systems that are all, so many, that everybody comes into, and they don't touch each other. So I just want to throw that out there. I didn't know. I'd love to get other people's thoughts as to, hey, we would we would become more invested in this because this is what we want out of it. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Sergio, I'm CAA San Francisco, and with my colleague Jen here. One of the things that popped up for me is that currently in San Francisco, a lot of the reporting we do is with local funders. Like they're kind of like the middle person between the federal dollars and the community that receives those fundings. So a lot of what we heard when we've asked the question about integration has been like, this is our system and we don't want to share, kind of like who owns the system, right? Yeah, you touched on that, Lawrence. So I'm curious to hear if that's something that's similar with the other counties on here. Like you have a middle person, or do you report directly to like the systems like HMIS or any of those other big federal databases? And my follow-up question to that is like, I think for our CSD annual report, we all report to one database. So like, I wonder if that would be like a good first trial or like run to see if, since we all use that system at the end of the year for the annual report, if we could build an API there to make our connection with our databases.
I'll wait on the response for the first one. The second one, absolutely. And it's about how to politically approach that, because I believe Community Software Group has a great relationship with CSD. They have their ear. They're going to do what is best for their data system, right? And to ensure that their data system is continues with the contract, which is fine. But and I know a few agencies already use them for their collection of that, but most do not. So absolutely, I think that's definitely a way to go in, and the way we'll pitch that with CSD, who's really the decision maker on that, is that, you know, this is going to help you get your annual reports quicker. It's going to help be more efficient, effective, yada, yada, yada. So absolutely. It's looking at, and then that would have CSD forcing Community Software Group to play nice in saying, hey, if you want to continue to be the state reporting mechanism, then you need to work with CalCAPA to build this out, so that everybody's, you know, can use the coding to do that. That's a great idea. And I'll be quiet so if somebody else wants to respond to your issue, because I've got a solution for that too. Is that we will have to use our power to kind of jump over the local folks. I mean, we will obviously be very polite and political and show grace to them. But part of that'll be, hey, they're willing, their desire to have total control over the data is affecting actual results.
All right, as we think of other issues, I've dropped our feedback survey for this session in the chat. We do want to hear more. So on our move toward collecting information from other agencies, how comfortable do we feel with reaching out to other agencies or looking through the feedback that other agencies provide to help with the analysis?
I have a question. So like in this room and out of I'm sure you also have like an emailing list. Is there any major like uh CalCAPA members that are missing from these calls, and like could we do a targeted approach with them? Just kind of like reach out and see if this is something they would be interested in being part of.
Uh, yeah, I mean, and CalCAPA usually has this like, we'll talk to everybody at one time kind of an approach. So a lot of times when you hear something from a peer, it comes across differently. David, did you have a thought? I didn't,
Yeah, I could name three. They're not on here now. I don't believe they're on here. I was looking through the names again, but that we could call pretty easily and say, hey, you guys have done a lot of work around this. You need to be a part. Come be a part of us and may save some efficiency on you working individually. But we mass number of folks will need some peer calls because even part of that's just encouraging, right? You want people to feel comfortable in their skill set and what they're doing at their agency and bringing that. And then sometimes it's one of those things I always say, you just don't know what you don't know, which is, hey, this could really help me do my job. This could help me do a lot of things at my agency if I can give a little time to this. So we always want it to be your return on investment for the time you spend should be, greater than what you're giving. So that's our goal. But yeah, there's definitely three or four that I'll follow up with after this call with some of their staffs and say, hey, we didn't see you on this. Need you to get involved and then send them this presentation.
yeah, and we'll absolutely have an initial push. So we expect maybe to collect a few people's responses to a survey, say. And then as we get responses, then we start to see who's not engaging with it, and then we can start to be more targeted as we move forward too. So a couple of different ways through to that, Sergio. Thank you. Oh, right. And I see, oh yeah, you're gonna reach out to CAB. Okay, cool. All right. And Donna, no worries. We got it recorded. You can watch the recording. That'll be good. Okay. Let's see. I will send out the recording for this presentation here today. It's also going to be may be chopped up a little bit and posted with the survey to lend some context to the survey. So you don't have to do a whole lot of explaining that I've already done. And oh, well, you'll see that pretty soon. We want to get this off the ground pretty rapidly. When we make that announcement, we'll also start looking at dates to reconvene this group for a time that makes sense.
Yeah, we just ask that if even if you've already filled it out, make sure you pass the survey along to some of the other agencies to saying, hey, you want to make sure you've seen this so that we can get as much information and make sure that where we do spend the money is the most valuable. So I appreciate that from everybody.
I wanted to comment if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah, so I'm just so I know you talked about some work that has been done by Marin County on these databases. Could we add to that or to that all that different data that has been collected already, or are we going to work off of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've taken Marin's initial data set and we'll be adding to it.
Okay.
So we'll put together a sort of a form to add to the list.
Okay.
And then that format, it adds a couple more pieces of information that we consider valuable in this process. So we may approach those folks that have already engaged that list to enrich their responses a little bit. And for everyone else, we'll be seeing it kind of for the first time. And that growing data set, I was scratching my head, on how to make it available to everybody, because we want to keep that really private. That kind of a list is, I don't know, it could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Let's put it that way, right? So we want to be very careful about spreading that out. I didn't want to put it on an open site for everybody to see. So we'll very likely have some more secure ways of sharing that information with this group. so that we can do our analysis. At any time, we could probably share a point in time, report of what we've collected,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good question.
I just wanted to share that because I work for Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County. I'm the data person here, and we're having all these challenges as well. But I actually met with Ryan Dosier from Community Action Partnership of Kern. I don't know if you know him.
Yep.
They have a really good system going on, and they have a good workaround for HMIS and APIs and all of that. So I would really recommend to look into that.
Yeah, I think maybe Ryan wasn't able to participate on the call today, but I totally agree. We've talked about that too. They do have a very impressive system going on at Kern and huge. So that's another thing, when you're able to test the thing at scale, whew, you've got something. So at least it's been troubleshooted. How about any other recommendations? While we're on that, thank you for that. Any other recommendations for folks to reach out to? You can also drop that in the chat if you've got any suggestions for people to include directly in this group. I'll reach out to them and ask them in. Right. Are there any more comments for the service group that we're kicking off here? Okay, yeah. Donna and Aaron, yeah. And anybody who joined the call today, I'm going to be sending the recording to. And yes, we'll get you onto the list to be part of this service group. That's fine. Yeah. Thank you for asking. There were others that were asking on how to get onto the service group. If you were part of that original thread in that data dev group, if you reply to that, I'm going to add you to the group, and we'll have a new we'll have an email address dedicated to this project. Okay. For a subgroup. All right. Sweet. Well, folks, I'm gonna give you like 10 minutes to prepare for your next meeting. Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate everyone's contribution to this effort. We're looking forward to making some really significant impact to how it is that we treat data, and that we're increasing the efficiencies of our groups and our agencies. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Lawrence.